Welcome to the MudRoom, our weekly free and live uncommon sense parenting class. How is everyone today? I can't not believe that it is almost August. Like, what the heck? July went by in an absolute whirlwind, probably because I have been so busy with my 41 new parentability families. I am so thrilled to have each and every one of them. It is just so cool, y'all, when new people come into parentability, because I do like this really cheesy little welcome post with, the Facebook balloon background, and I ask them to introduce themselves. And it is so neat to see parents immediately connecting, whether they've got kids the same age or they're struggling with the same things, or even just they just have the same first name. Like, it is so heartwarming to see the community embracing every new family that comes in and immediately supporting them and starting friendships. So thank you to all my members who are so awesome and make me just glow with happiness every single day. And welcome to everyone who joined in July. I just cannot wait to keep working with these families, y'all. They're already making breakthroughs and posting wins, and I just love it. So welcome. Hey, Nicola! Okay, before we get started on tonight's class, just allow me to quickly introduce myself. My name is Allana Robinson, and I'm a parenting effectiveness coach. I help parents of toddlers and preschoolers understand why their children are misbehaving and how to fix it without yelling, shaming, or using timeouts. I am your host here on the MudRoom, and as you just heard, I host Parentability, which is my flagship program where I coach parents in a group setting, and I host my free peer support Facebook group, The Parenting Posse. So, something that I've noticed more and more in the Posse and other mommy groups lately is this fear about how to talk to kids about where babies come from. It comes up. They're having a new sibling, kids get curious. How did the baby get in your tummy? Or they start to notice that mom and dad have different parts than they do. And I'm going to say, I don't think that there's any one particular right way to do this, but I do think that there are some principles you need to keep in mind when you begin to think about how you're going to present this information to your kids. Hey, Janelle! Oh, it is so super dry in here. I don't know why. I need to get a humidifier for this room. Okay, tip number 1. First, I want you to understand that in this instance, earlier really is better. Start talking about these things before the whole societal ick factor gets to your kids. It is a lot easier to discuss bodily functions in a very matter-of-fact way when you are trying to fight against the reaction of disgust that they will eventually get. And if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times lately. When your child gets really emotional or they start to sense danger, the learning center in their brain gets the plug pulled on it. They can't assimilate new information. So if you wait to talk about this stuff till they've already gotten the message from society that this information is taboo and shameful, just the mention of penises and vulvas and boobs is going to send them into red brain, and then you're basically screwed. Nothing's going in. You can power through, but the chances of any information actually sticking is just totally gone. So when you discuss bodily functions with a 3-4-year-old, they don't care. They have no context that this information is taboo. If anything, they're curious because we don't talk about it a whole lot. So when you finally do, they're like, oh, tell me more. So it's really easy to have that initial conversation without anyone getting awkward as fuck. My 3-year-old, he is obsessed with how babies are made, how he was born, genitals, all of that. My 5.5-year-old, he's starting to understand that this information is something that we don't openly discuss just anywhere. Excuse me. Like, he's not awkward about it at home with Dad and I, because We've always been really honest and open with him about it. But he's starting to understand that we don't talk about it outside of the house with, you know, grandma and grandpa and auntie and uncle and strangers. If I was just introducing this information to him at the first time at 5, I'd already be fighting a losing battle. Losing a fighting battle. Hey Thea! Hey Amanda! Hey Madeline! Yeah, Janelle says that she's already had to have the menstruation talk with her 6.5 or almost 7-year-old, and she's terrified, and because just talking about it totally freaked her out. So she said being factual and emotional was really key. Yes, absolutely. I know it's hard. Like, they're little kids, and you're like, this isn't something you really need to worry about. But if we talk about it now and we start having those conversations, it's not just one conversation, y'all. It's multiple small conversations. Then it doesn't become a taboo, and when they realize that this is information you have purposefully not shared with them, they're not going to start making up all sorts of reasons in their heads as to why. Second tip is to use real words. It's not a pee-pee. It's a penis. It's not a woohoo, or a cookie, or a treasure, or even a vajayjay. It's your vulva. For one, experts in child sexual abuse have shown time and time again that children who don't know the anatomically correct words for their body parts are much more likely to be sexually abused because it's talked about in very theoretical, cutesy terms. So, if it happens, it isn't recognized by adults as easily when they talk about it because it isn't clear exactly what it is that they're talking about. Right? A 4-year-old talking about how someone touched their cookie isn't going to send up a red flag for most people. Also, if you've never used weird words, weird euphemisms for their body parts, and they suddenly start calling it something strange like that, that's going to send off an alarm that someone has been talking to them about their body in an unauthorized way. Use real words. It's okay. Using cutesy words is also the fastest way to convey shame. We don't come up with weird, strange euphemisms for other body parts. Nobody's calling their elbows their pointy parts, or, you know, their leaners or something like that. When we use strange euphemisms for their genitals, it automatically communicates to children that there's something wrong with these body parts. We can't talk about them openly. They're so upsetting that we just can't call them what they are, which creates the problem I was just talking about where they start to feel awkward about talking about them at all. Sorry, it's going to be one of those nights where I just take water breaks all the time. Oh, I didn't realize how dry it was in here. Okay, third is, as Janelle was saying, be matter of fact. Don't talk about genitals and have a conversation about morality at the same time and conflate the two. Just tell them how their body works in plain English and don't assign any morality to it. My 5-year-old apparently told his kindergarten teacher all about how menstrual cups work after his Christmas concert last year. And she was like, you know, he's very well informed about it and not shy at all. Well, first of all, that's because I haven't gone to the bathroom without an audience since 2013, but also because I've never assigned any shame or disgust to my body when talking to him about it. He's seen me put my menstrual cup in, and yes, I'm getting TMI, suck it up, we're all adults. And he's asked about it, and I've explained it to him in terms that he can understand, and then we repeat that same conversation 2 to 3 times a month. When he was like 2, he noticed that daddy is circumcised and he isn't. And he asked. And my husband explained it to him in very simple terms. It's come up many times since then because my 2 boys and my husband generally shower together when he's home. And when my youngest noticed it, it was this just so cute because we heard my oldest say, "It's okay, daddy's just circumvented and we aren't." So that led to a whole conversation about the word circumcised and how it has nothing to actually do with size. And, you know, it was just, it kind of snowballed. But my husband, God bless him, had the presence of mind to just kind of take a deep breath and give them the information they were looking for. They know how babies are made. My oldest asked his dad, again, while they were in the bath, and dad just laid it out as simply as possible. And, you know, occasionally he thinks of more clarifying questions, and, you know, we answered them when they come up. But it wasn't just one conversation and then it was done. You know, we kind of had these little micro conversations. And we've had the morality conversation, you know, that what our personal moral values are, talking about consent, talking about inappropriate touching, any faith-based beliefs, etc. But that has been in a different conversation to the bodily functions and how our bodies work and how they work together. You want your children to be comfortable talking to you about how their body works, and if you infuse every conversation about bodies with moral messaging, they won't be. Just separate out those topics. I promise they'll make the connection. Madeline says, okay, how do I explain my period to my 3.5-year-old? And how detailed or specific do you get about how the baby's got in my uterus? I was just I've just told them. Like, every month that I don't have a baby in my uterus, I bleed. And that's all the information my kids have really wanted at this point. I don't think Logan's actually asked why I bleed. Like, we haven't had to get that specific. But basically, I give them the most basic information. And then if they ask questions, I answer them. Like, that's how you kind of know what information they're ready for and what information they're not. If they're old enough to wonder about it, they're old enough to have real information. So I basically give them the kind of baseline, matter of fact, this is why this happens. And if they ask why, or if they ask more clarifying questions, then great, I give them the answer. If they don't, then they're just like, oh, okay, great, that's all they needed to know. As for how specific do you get about how babies got in your uterus, we've given them the baseline information about intercourse. And if they have more questions, they ask them. And there's this really, really great book. I'll put the link for it in the comments when we're done. It's called What Makes a Baby. And I really, really love it because it's not just about, you know, a man and a woman and sperm and ovum, and it's very accessible for little kids. But it also doesn't just talk about heterosexual couples. It talks about adoption. It talks about IVF. It talks about everything. If there is a way for a person to come to be and for a family to be created, it addresses it. And I really, really like it because it helps to talk more about it as in terms of people being made versus this relationship, I guess, if that makes sense. Takes the morality out of it. So it's just talking about how this is how people are made and this is how families are made. And it kind of separates those topics. So I really, really like that book. It's called What Makes a Baby. My computer's giving me errors. Awesome. Okay. Fourth, don't tie the concept of consent implicitly to sex. We have talked about teaching children about consent in the episode on Rough and Tumble Play, and I stand by that. You can go back and listen to it. There are so many situations that children need to understand the concept of consent for before they get to sexual dealings. And if you don't teach it in those contexts, then it's going to feel really awkward and out of place when they get to the stage that they are dealing with sexual encounters. Start the habit of receiving and giving and revoking consent early, please. You can teach it without having to utter a single word about sex. Again, separating. Oh, I'm not having a good mouth night. Separating out bodies and sexuality. You need consent to touch someone. People need consent to touch you. You have the right to revoke consent at any time, and so do other people. And if they get in the habit when they're 4 and they're playing ninjas and princesses, and then they get in the habit when they're 8, when they're playing Transformers and Little Ponies, and when they're 12 and they're starting to attend dances, then it will be an ingrained habit by time they're in their teens and starting to explore those bodily functions in a much more hands-on way. Okay. That's it. As I said, there's many ways to actually go about having this talk, but those are my tips to keep it not so scary. Okay? So how you actually go about it, that's kind of up to you. Again, I really like to do it in the car, in the bathtub, when we're doing other things. We just kind of chat about it. And once you've, again, as I said, presented that baseline information for them, if they have questions, they're going to come and ask. And then you know that they're ready for more information. But if you don't open those gates and you don't start having those conversations when they're little, then they're not going to continue to have the conversation with you as they become ready for more information. Earlier is better. Use real words. Separate out the topic of bodily functions and morality, and don't tie the concept of consent to sex. I know it can be scary, y'all, but don't hold this information back from your kids. It is so important. We can raise the first generations of kids into adults who are really informed about this stuff. Okay. Thank you so much for being here with me this evening. Let me know if you have any questions or comments. I come back, I check. I'm happy to talk more about this. I will see you next week for another Uncommon Sense parenting class. Bye.